legends. Now, the UFC has statistically got the worst finish rate in all of MMA. That is what we are going to be talking about today. Now, listen to me. I got into MMA right around the Conor McGregor era. That's me. I am a Conor McGregor, I guess, MMA baby boomer at this stage. I remember it vividly. I was on a building site. I saw Conor McGregor starch Jose Aldo, this bloke that I didn't know. I didn't understand the aura of Jose Aldo, but I saw him starch him in a couple of seconds. And it wasn't just that, right? I'd been borrowing the entire card off the internet on this building site. I was on a scaffold. I had it set up on my phone. It's often how I still watch the MMA to this very day, right? And I was watching the entire card, and it was, to me, at the time, the greatest thing that I had ever seen in my life. I mean, to that Dougie, right? At that time, right? Nowadays, after seeing so many UFC cards, I kind of realized that a Conor McGregor card, it's a little bit mid. It's a little bit mid. Conor McGregor card's a little bit mid. But back then, it's the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life. The greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I fell in love with the UFC and MMA instantly after watching that card. I had never been much of a sporting kid growing up. I grew up in a sporting family. My brother had done sports consistently, but my dad did sports. I went to a school that was so heavily into sports. It's like the school was essentially just like a sporting school. But I found the entire pursuit of team sports kind of laughable, especially the big sport in my city, which is football. But to you Americans, it is nothing like the kind of football that you know, and to the Europeans listening, even less. This is called Australian rules football, and it is the maddest game you've ever seen in your life. And my city is mad for that. We have a public holiday for our Super Bowl day, right? It is insane how much my city loves this sport. And being of my generation, we would grow up listening to this bumps and brawls era where people's teeth were getting knocked out, players were getting left unconscious on the field. The 70s and the 80s in AFL, the game was brutal. And this is what I thought sport was growing up listening to these stories. But then, as I was a child, growing up through the 90s and the noughties, they started to clean it up and make it safe. The progressive liberal Australia that we know today got its claws into this sport. And essentially, they wanted to turn it into basketball. It was all happening in the air. This is relevant, right? I'm not getting all Chael Sonnen on you here, okay? Listen to me. This is relevant. You kick the bloody ball around in the air, okay? There's very little touching in the game now, which is very strange because the sport is sort of built into the idea of crashing into each other and grabbing the ball off the other guy. Yet there's 36 players on the field running around a field that you could quite literally land an aircraft on. 36 people on this field, right? There are 22 rules being enforced at all times and 10 referees running around this aircraft carrier-sized field trying to keep this contact sport safe at all times. It's the perfect metaphor for Australian governance. Over-policed in the spirit to give a sense of competition in a nanny state environment. It is the perfect Australian sport. And everyone in my city takes it very seriously, but it is clearly a joke. It's obviously the most convoluted thing ever happening. And then I see MMA. Two guys. You lock them in a cage, and from what I could tell, there was about 3 rules. Don't poke him in the eye, don't kick him in the balls, and don't soccer kick him in the head. And then, after 15 minutes, the least fucked up guy wins, and if it's really important, we let him go at it for about 30 minutes. Very simple, very to the point, very violent. Oh, and in case you lose track of time with all this violence going on, there is just a fantastic set of tits walking past every couple of minutes to remind you where we're at in the fight. I was in love. I was instantly in love. I finally get what sport is. I understand. It was real. It was visceral. It was about the best versus the best. And then as I started to watch it more and understand there is a difference between UFC and MMA. You're all understanding the difference, right? I didn't even know what MMA was. But as I grew into it and started to understand everything that was going on and discovered the stories of the literal psychos that helped build this sport, I knew that I had finally found my home. But now, now, it is 2024 and the data has been dropped. if you are a fan of violence, the UFC statistically is one of the worst MMA organizations in the world. When it comes to what I want, seeing another man separated from consciousness, the UFC no longer provides me that. We seem to be constantly arguing about the rules all the time. It seems to become this bloated corporate mess. So what do you do about that? And why does that all exist? Well, I think it exists. It's a product, it's a failure of its own success, yeah? The UFC, it has become the gold standard in MMA. It is the place where the best do fight the best. They might not be doing it for a title, but the best do fight the best. And because of that, because we're getting the best fight the best, it means you're having a far lower finish rate because you have these fighters that are actually competent fighters. They know what they're doing. They know how to protect themselves. They are engaging in the sport of combat in a much smarter way. They are bringing the art to MMA. And when it comes to the legitimacy of this sport and the art of MMA, it's amazing. It's beautiful. But when it comes to the soul of the UFC, the Just Bleed guy, the tap out hoodies, the Nate Diaz giving us the double bicep with the blood running down his face, that era, that has seemed to be slowly drained out of the UFC, and it's what made the UFC great. And then on top of that, in 2024, because I covered this in a video last year, please don't go back and watch my old videos, they're horrible. But I covered this in a video last year. We were the third worst MMA organization. Now we're the worst. And I do say we, because like I said, I love the UFC. It feels like a part of me. But this year in 2024, we had our new Coke experiment with the new gloves that dropped the finish rate even further. So now the UFC, it comes in dead last. The competition is too tight. The fighters are too good. The gloves tried to be made too safe, and it has absolutely plummeted everything. Now look, it's not so bad, because with the success of the UFC means that there are offshoots. When anything becomes successful, you see similar products, they all start to shoot off and grow their own success as well as they fill in their little niche spots in the marketplace, right? MMA YouTube is a perfect example of this. We are the petri dish of this, right? Now there's 1,000 MMA YouTubers. Every idiot with his own phone can go ahead and make a YouTube video. G'day. But it's great for you, the consumer, because you can get whatever style of presenter you want to vibe with. It's great for me, the fan of MMA YouTube. I can listen to whoever I want to listen to, and I can ignore whoever I want to ignore. And the guys that I do listen to, I really vibe with, and I really enjoy their content. It's not like back in the day where I had to listen to like Luke Thomas ramble because it was either him or Ariel Helwani. Now there's 1,000 different flavors for whatever you like, and that's great. And it's the same thing with MMA organizations. Now every country has a really great MMA organization. Here in Australia, we've got Eternal, we've got Hex. They're both awesome MMA organizations. And one of the organizations that stood out to me the most around the world happens to have the best finish rate, and that is Cage Warriors. And it does seem like Cage Warriors is becoming that spiritual successor to the UFC when it comes to MMA. BKFC might be that combat sports second place, and Cage Warriors is that MMA violence, fun, rowdy walkouts, big personalities. Cage Warriors seems to be where it's at. And last year, if you were watching this channel all throughout last year, I wanted to fill that void with something, that void of violence that I seem to need to crave as a man. I wanted to fill that with something, and I thought it was one championship. But after the year that one championships had, it's very clear to see the writing on the wall. All of their biggest stars have left them. They are in a financial crisis. They always have been, but last year it got even worse. And it's not just the fact that some of their biggest stars left them, but 3 of their board of directors walked out of them last year as well. I don't know what drug lord is pumping money into one, but it seems to be a useless endeavor, and the drug lords are not going to be around to financially prop it up forever. So I'm still going to watch one from time to time. I'm still going to enjoy it. I still love seeing Muay Thai in 4-ounce gloves. It is awesome. But again, if you were here for all of last year, you know that I have spearheaded this thing called the alt-tab movement. Now, really quickly, what is the alt-tab movement? All right, look, there is a reason that Cage Warriors has so many more finishes than the UFC. This is important. It's because of WMMA. It's because of WMMA. Now, I know Cage Warriors has WMMA, but it doesn't have a lot of it. It's got a very small amount of it. And the UFC, not only has it got WMMA and a lot of WMMA, it's got heavyweight. And heavyweight is a problem. Because the UFC is the gold standard, it needs to have a heavyweight division. But literally, every single heavyweight fighter in the world underneath the UFC's top 7 is a fat, hot, steaming pile of shit. They are garbage. So, when you mix in the new gloves, the old new gloves, anyway, when you mix in a high level of competition, WMMA, and a heavyweight division, you have got a card that is like, it's like 30 to 40% just crap. Now, when I watch fights, I don't know about you, but I'm not at a pub watching fights. I'm not even watching them with my friends at my house. I'm alone in my office doing a live stream with the boys. But if I'm not alone in my office doing a live stream with the boys, I'm probably just on the couch with some beers, just watching the fights back on Fight Pass. And you might be the same. You know what I mean? You might be in your room or in your laptop or bring it up on your Xbox. You might be at home by yourself just watching the fights, yeah? And there's nothing stopping you from opening up a new tab whenever WMMA starts or whenever a fat heavyweight starts that isn't, 7 and above, to just open up a new window and go to Fight Pass where Cage Warriors is right there. Or if you want, say hi to me on my Discord and I'll give you some links, boys. I will link you up and you can just watch Cage Warriors instead while those fights are happening live, and then alt tab back to the UFC after it's over. So lads, this year's alt-tab movement will be Cage Warriors. Boycott WMMA with me and fat heavyweights in 2025, lads. And I'm not just saying boycott WMMA to be edgy, right? It has statistically gotten worse since the Nunes, Cyborg, Ronda Rousey era. The women's main event finish rates have literally plummeted to nearly 0. In fact, I think it was 0. I'm bringing up the stats here. I'm pretty sure it's 0 in 2024. They do not finish each other off. You need a man. You need a man to get a finish. But you know what I'm saying. They don't finish each other off. Boycott it. Fat heavyweights, they got a minute of cardio, and then it's just two fat men sweating in on each other for 15 minutes, 14 minutes. If they don't get a finish in the first, well, then it's the whole fight. 15 minutes of just fat men in underwear sweating on each other. No, thank you, sir. I am not watching it. I'm done. 2025's alt-tab movement will be based around Cage Warriors. I talked about them a lot last year, but they have risen to the top like a fine cream. And that's what we're going to be going with. If this is your first time here, my name is Dougie. I try and make an MMA video every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, and I go live about 3 times a week. If you want to know when all of that happens, hit that subscribe button. If you want to know when I go live, hit that notification bell. If you are already on board with the channel, please leave a like. And if you are one of the paying members of this channel, can you believe it? People pay for this. If you're one of the paying members of this channel, thank you so much for supporting the channel. It means a lot. Your names are here at the end of the card. And until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.